If your last name is on this list, your ancestor didn't just cross an ocean, they crossed it wearing a different name than the one you carry today. These 10 common American surnames trace back through ship manifests and colonial church registers to German families who landed in Pennsylvania between 1683 and 1750s, and to the panic of the First World War, when anything German became dangerous overnight. Most families who carry these names today have no idea what they once said. Stay until number 1, because that surname belongs to a 5-star general and a president of the United States. And the German original was hiding in plain sight the whole time. Number 10. Stone. Today it sounds like a New England quarry town, but stone comes from the German Stein, meaning simply stone. The Steins clustered in the German settlements of colonial Pennsylvania, where dozens of longer names, Steinbach, Steinberg, Steinmetz, were built on that same hard little route. Many of those families arrived in the Great Palatine Wave that began around 1710, sailing down the Rhine to Rotterdam and across to Philadelphia. Once ashore, a Stein could shorten and translate his way to the short, flat, thoroughly American surname, Stone, in a single generation. Legend among some Stone families holds the name was always English, but the church books often say otherwise. If your name is Stone, your ancestor may have carried a name that was chiseled down, quite literally, from German rock. The next name sounds like an English archer, but it hides a farmer. Number 9. Bowman. Today it sounds like a medieval man with a bow, but many American Bowmans come from the German Bowman, and Bowman doesn't mean archer at all. It means a farmer, a man of the land. The Bowmans settled thickly through the Pennsylvania Dutch country, farming the same limestone valleys their name described. They came over in the 1700s on the Palatine ships out of Rotterdam, and on the English-speaking side of the courthouse, Bowman was respelled to look and sound like Bowman. The respelling is well attested in Pennsylvania land records, where the same man appears as Bowman in the church book and Bowman on his deed. If your name is Bowman, your ancestor may never have touched a bow. He worked a plow, and a clerk turned him into an archer. The next name sits at a loom. Number 8. Weaver. Today, it sounds like an English village census, but weaver comes from the German Weber, the weaver at the loom, one of Germany's most common names. The Webers spread across the Rhineland weaving towns before they emigrated, then reassembled in the textile and farming districts of Pennsylvania. They arrived through the 1730s and 1740s, the boom decades of German migration into Philadelphia. Weber sits only a short step in sound from weaver, and the craft is identical, so the translation was almost automatic. If your name is Weaver, your ancestor may have worked wool by hand on a German loom before the family ever saw English cloth. The next name was pulled fresh from the oven. Number 7. Baker. Today, it's as English as a village bakery. But Baker comes from the German Bäcker, from the old word for baking, one of the most common surnames in all of Germany. The Bäckers were town and village people, clustered wherever there were mouths to feed, and they carried that trade straight into Pennsylvania. Many landed in the 1730s at Philadelphia, the busiest German port of entry in the colonies. Bäcker translated cleanly into baker, the English word for the same trade, at the same oven. Plenty of American bakers are genuinely English. The German original only shows in the paper trail. If your name is Baker, your ancestor may have moved the bread from one language to the other without changing the recipe. The next name framed the barns of Pennsylvania. Number 6. Carpenter. Today, it's a plain English trade name. But Carpenter is a pure translation of the German Zimmermann, the man who works in timber, the woodworker who framed houses and barns. The Zimmermanns were everywhere the Germans built, and in Pennsylvania, they built constantly. The great bank barns of the Dutch country are their monument. They came over across the middle 1700s, and nobody kept that German mouthful once an English word sat right there. Zimmermann became Carpenter, and the trade walked whole into the new language. If your name is Carpenter, your ancestor may have raised a barn that still stands, under a name he translated the day he needed it. The next name pulled nets on a German lake. Number 5. Fisher. Today it passes for English without a second glance. But Fischer comes from the German Fischer, the fisherman, one of the most common German surnames of all. The Fischers gathered along the rivers and lakes of the German states, then followed the water trades into Pennsylvania and the Midwest. They came through the Philadelphia docks in the 1740s and 1750s, and Fischer needed only to drop that middle letter to pass as the English Fischer. If your name is Fischer, your ancestor may have hauled nets on a German lake, one generation before your family sat down as ordinary American fishers. The next name is a color. Number 4. Brown. Today, it's one of the most ordinary names in the English-speaking world, but a great many American Browns come from the German Braun, simply the color brown, a nickname for brown hair or a brown complexion. The Browns scattered through the German settlements, indistinguishable on paper from the English and Scottish Browns already here. They arrived across the 1700s, and the disguise took almost nothing. Drop a letter, adjust the spelling, and brown is brown. The sound barely changed. The origin disappeared completely. If your name is Brown, your ancestor's name may have been a German nickname that slipped into an English crowd and was never seen again. The next name cut cloth and split into two different surnames. Number 3, Snyder, and also Taylor. Today, Snyder and Taylor look like two unrelated families, but both can come from the same German word, Schneider, the tailor. The man with the shears, and Schneider shows you both disguises at once. The Schneiders were town craftsmen across the German states, and they carried the trade into Pennsylvania in enormous numbers. They came through the 1730s and 1740s. Then the family chose a path, translate the meaning, and Schneider becomes tailor. Keep the sound and respell it, and Schneider becomes Schneider. Both Taylor and Snyder appear as Anglicizations of Schneider in Pennsylvania German records. If your name is Snyder or Taylor, your ancestor may have cut cloth under the very same German name. Two American surnames, one German shear. The next name ground the grain. Number 2, Miller. Today it's plain American farmland, but Miller comes from the German Müller, spelled with 2 dots over the U, the single most common surname in Germany today. The Müllers stood wherever a river turned a wheel, and they brought that trade to the mill towns of Pennsylvania, Ohio, and the whole German belt of the Midwest. They poured in through the 1740s and 1750s. A Müller ground grain exactly like an English miller. So the meaning matched so cleanly, the change left almost no seam, the 2 dots simply dropping away in a clerk's hand. If your name is Miller, the mill your ancestor worked may have stood on a river in the Rhineland before it ever stood in Ohio. And now, number 1. Number 1 Smith, and the secret it's hiding. Smith in German. Schmidt, the blacksmith, the man at the forge. Schmidt is one of the most common surnames in all of Germany. And because Smith already meant exactly the same trade in English, the translation almost wrote itself. Most American Smiths really are English, but a Pennsylvania Smith with a Lutheran church record behind him may well have been a Schmidt 3 or 4 generations back. Here is the secret. The pressure that turned Schmidt into Smith wasn't only quiet drift, it was fear. When the United States entered the First World War in 1917, anything German became suspect overnight. Sauerkraut was rebranded Liberty Cabbage. German newspapers folded, and German classes were pulled from schools. In 1918, a young immigrant named Robert Prager was dragged from a jail near Collinsville, Illinois, and lynched by a mob on nothing more than a rumor of disloyalty. Even the British royal family read the mood, dropping the German name Saxe-Coburg-Gotha to become the House of Windsor. If a king could change his name to sound less German, a Schmidt in Ohio had every reason to start writing Smith, and the proof is standing in the history books. In 1741, Hans Nikolaus Eisenhower, Ironhewer, stepped off a ship in Pennsylvania. Over the generations, the vowels flattened and the spelling wore down to Eisenhower. 2 centuries later, that name belonged to Dwight D. Eisenhower, the general who commanded the armies that defeated Germany in the Second World War, and the 34th President of the United States. The man who beat Germany carried a German blacksmith's cousin trade in his own surname, and almost nobody in his hometown ever knew. If your name is Smith, your ancestry isn't just a family story. The church registers and ship manifests can turn it into a record. A Schmidt boarding in Rotterdam. A Smith stepping off in Philadelphia. That's not the sound of a name. That's proof. 10 surnames. 10 threads leading back through Rhine ports, colonial church books, and one war that made a whole country afraid of its own grandparents' names. Your name isn't decoration. It's a record, and a free site like Family Search is where you start pulling the thread, one generation at a time, until you strike a German spelling or run out of Germans. The ink is what tells you, not the sound. The name got quieter, the blood did not. Drop your surname in the comments and tell me, did you know?